This is ChangeMakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
This week's ChangeMaker is Manuela Silva, the CEO of the Community Housing Opportunities Corporation. Manny is a well-known force in the affordable housing industry. Prior to joining Community Housing Opportunities, she was responsible for developing the Fruitvale-BART Transit Village that transformed the Oakland area into a vibrant, livable community for surrounding residents. Manny, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Katie. It's my pleasure.
Before we get started talking about the strides that you've made while working in California with affordable housing, let's just hear a little bit about yourself. I mean, how did you get started in this field?
You know, we have those defining moments in our lives. I used to be a consultant and was working with a nonprofit organization in Oakland. And I met a young girl, 15 years old, just in high school, had just done a word processing class through Catholic Charities. And she came to do a 100-hour internship with a nonprofit group. And I met her and she was bright, in a lot of ways reminded me of myself. And so I started talking to her about what she wanted to do when she grew up. And she said, well, I make more money working in a restaurant than I do working in an office, because they were paying her a little stipend. And she thought that that's the salary or the wage that she would be making if she worked in an office. So I started talking to her about the American dream. You know, an education, that you get married and you buy the house, the little white picket fence and the little puppy dog. And she told me, hey, those are your dreams. I don't dream like that. And it was like, we all have the same dreams. That's why America is the land of opportunity. This is why we come here. This is why we want to participate in the American dream. But her dream was much simpler. When I asked her what her dreams were, her dream was to sleep in her own bed, to not have to share her bed with 3 other siblings, because her family had come to here as undocumented immigrants, and they lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. And she wanted, the weight of everyday living was so heavy that it didn't afford them the chance to even have a dream beyond where they were going to sleep that night and how they were going to make it through the day. To me, that was an awakening moment. You know, I would write my check and donate to a charity, and I would support families for the Thanksgiving meals or Christmas. But I had never personally experienced that. That touched me in a way that I just couldn't walk away from it. It became my mission in life, that every encounter that we have, we don't know how we're going to react or to impact somebody's life. But that moment impacted my life as it did hers. You know, we fast forward 20 years later, and this young lady is a homeowner. She got married. She did buy the home. She has 3 children. They're all in private Catholic school. They're going to college. And so they will have opportunities that her mother didn't. By virtue of her birth, she wasn't able to achieve that. But meeting me helped her do that. And so it's generational change. It's breaking that cycle of poverty and helping build a future for future generations. And that's how I got hooked into doing what I do. We impact people's lives daily. If it's one family at a time, it's one family at a time. If it's one building at a time, it's one building at a time. But over the decades, we touched thousands of families, and we create significant change.
You know, you've mentioned something that several of us have heard, that when people are fighting so hard for survival, they're unable to actually fulfill their dreams. And that's what is so amazing about affordable housing, is it can be the stabilizer that connects them to the next level, or provides the core living that they need, or just provides momentum in their life for that particular point of time. So I get what you're saying, and I think many of our listeners will as well, because several people who work in this industry have gotten started either by becoming aware of the needs of people for affordable housing or having the lack of affordable housing themselves. And so it's a real unique industry about how each of us have come to this field. So talk about the thousands of people that you mentioned that you're impacting every day. What do you and your corporation, what do you guys do on a daily basis as both a nonprofit and a developer?
The interesting part of the work that we do is that we can take a young family like the one I mentioned and make significant impact for the rest of their lives. Or we can take a 90-year-old couple that have been separated for the first time in their 70-year marriage because the housing where they lived was not mobility accessible. And the wife suffered a stroke and had to go live in a convalescent home. And that was the first time they had been separated in their lives. We offered them a unit in one of our buildings that was fully accessible. And then they were able to be reunited. I asked the gentleman, "What are you going to do when your wife comes home?" And so he gestured that he was just going to kiss her. And it was so cute. And so we start realizing that it's not just about quality of life, but it's quality of life for life, cradle to grave. We always consider in the design approach, in the planning of a building, we consider the quality of life and the human needs that our buildings will serve. It's not just brick and mortar. Brick and mortar is good, but where someone lives, it's not just a space, it's a home.
What you said about renting experiences that contribute to the quality of life, that really hit me, because that really is the core mission of what we're doing. We're trying to improve those experiences for everybody who is in whatever kind of affordable housing development they're in. And that was very profound. So I'm getting a glimpse of your vision here, and you and your team are working to create more affordable housing units in places that sometimes don't even have them or are not associated developments in places like Coachella and Palm Springs even. How are those development deals coming along, and how did that even get started?
Yeah, so why not Palm Springs? That's my philosophy. Why not? I think that affordable housing by association sometimes is identified as public housing or the projects. And even HUD, in their wisdom, realized that that wasn't such a good idea. Affordable housing it should be indistinguishable. It's just housing. What makes it affordable is how it's financed.
Mm-hmm.
So the Monarch in Palm Springs, for instance, it was designed to fit into the built environment. It's complementary of its surrounding area. It respects the surrounding area. And that's the outside design. It's also designed to encourage family life, get-togethers, a water splash park. The park is designed like a butterfly. The name itself is representative of the migration of the monarch butterfly that goes through Palm Springs. And the neighborhoods, actually, one of the neighborhood associations is the one that brought that up. And we went along with it. We just thought, oh, great idea, the monarch. The affordability of the units has to do with how it's financed. This development, it's about a $30 million development, 60 units of housing. But only $5.2 million of that $30 million is serviceable debt. The rest of it are grants and subordinate debts and tax credits. If you were renting a unit similar to this in Palm Springs that didn't have the equity, the public investment in the deal, your rent would be $3,500, $4,000 a month. You can rent this unit at the Monarch for an average of $1,000 per month. And that's what makes it affordable. The way it's financed, not the way it's built. It shouldn't have anything to do with where it's located or what it looks like.
So you're able to then offer a real affordable rent for people in the area, which is a provision of affordable housing, but you're also probably impacting a lot of employed people in the area who, reducing their commutes and, saving on all of those other impacts in their life, correct?
Correct. It's not a joke, but the underlying message in the industry is that you drive until you can afford. And so a lot of working families, and we're talking about working families, and we're talking about not all medical professionals are doctors or RNs. There's a lot of people in the industry that are just working. And sometimes we refer to people as the working poor. They have jobs that don't quite allow them to have enough disposable income to improve their quality of life. But if their housing burden was decreased, they were not so burdened with the cost of housing, the cost of commute, the cost of a car, worrying about how many bus transfers
Mm-hmm.
to get to school or to get to work, or is my car going to make it today? That's for the families, but it also impacts the employer. What if you have a nanny? You rely on that person being there at 8 o'clock in the morning, but their car broke down, too much traffic on a highway. You can't go to work. You can't fulfill your responsibility because your nanny didn't come early enough, didn't get there. It's about creating opportunities and creating integrated communities where people can live, work, shop, eat, all in the same place.
So was Monarch Apartments in Palm Springs, was it the city's first affordable housing complex to be built in more than a decade, or what's the perspective there? And how is the community responding to it?
We heard that the city had a parcel of land in this historically and architecturally significant neighborhood that for more than 10 years they had never been able to get a project or development approved in that location. It had always been protested. The thought of putting affordable housing on this parcel, right, surrounded by homes of such significance, was impossible. Again, the perception of what affordable housing looks like. And we approached the city council, and no one ever does this by themselves. I mean, we couldn't have done this without the tremendous support of the city of Palm Springs and its city council. They championed this project. And we were also told that they were very important neighborhood organizations, and they're very organized. They meet regularly, they have their own meetings, they have collective meetings. And so these organizations, these community groups or neighborhood groups are very, very organized. We didn't want to show up and just tell them that we wanted to build affordable housing in their backyard without being able to show them what affordable housing actually could look like. And so we had the architect draw up some schematics, just pretty pictures, something simple. And we took it to the neighbors. We took it to the meetings, and everyone was, wow, this is something we could live with. And they asked questions, and we solicited input from them. And so the idea for the project, they bought into it. This was almost like bringing their ideas and their wishes to fruition. We said to them, we know what you don't want. Tell us what you want. And that's how the Monarch happened. But it had great support from the city to begin with.
Well, Manny, I'd like to think that if you can build affordable housing in Palm Springs, you can build it anywhere in the nation. Is that too much to ask, right?
But that's the goal. If you drive down the street or down the freeway, you see auto malls where all the dealers are in one place, because sales promotes sales. You go to a mall and you have all your stores, because sales promote sales. They bring people. I think that same thing happens when you put all low income housing or low income families in the same neighborhood, in the same census tracts, because poverty will then build on poverty. There's nothing there that's going to lift them above the circumstances that they're in. And so integration of affordable housing into high resource communities that will help lift families out of the circumstances that they're in and provide greater opportunity for equity. The work we do promotes equity in low income families.
And you're doing great work there. What other housing markets or cities do you think you can expand or serve next?
Well, originally we were created in the city of Davis. And of course, Davis is a small city, small community, and it had UC Davis as an anchor employer, basically, and also people generator. And Davis was afraid of how it would grow. And CHOC was created to help the city grow sensibly, that affordable housing was going to be critical to the well-being of the community and its constituents. Davis adopted an inclusionary housing requirement so that every building that was built, every for sale or multifamily, had to include a 15-20% affordable component. And CHOC was critical in that process. We actually built the first 800 or so affordable units in the city of Davis. And then we moved from there. Other people would come and say, oh, CHOC is doing this in Davis. Can you come and do it in Woodland? Can you come and do it in Winters? Can you come and do it in Sacramento? And so we were originally created as Davis Community Housing and changed our name to just Community Housing and expanded our geographic area. We have a vision and we look for things that nobody else is doing that we can do. And as a result of the Palm Springs, the Monarch, there are 2 or 3 other developers now doing affordable housing, because it opened up the mindset and it opened up the city council to the possibilities and to the knowledge, acknowledging that working families need a place to live. So I like breaking the mold.
Well, clearly that mold needs broken, and we're glad that you're one of the many people who are doing that. So walk us down memory lane, what it was like when you were first, the only community development organization in your city.
That precedes me, but I think that CHOC was highly regarded and made a significant impact during those initial years. I would say probably during the first 10 years of the organization's existence were dedicated to the city of Davis alone. So we fast forward 20 years later, and we're still there. And in fact, we just completed a renovation, substantial rehab of 136 units that we built in the early 90s. So new life, new amenities, upgrading everything to building code, green measures. And the thing about Davis is when someone moves in, they don't move out. They This is where they want to be. This is where they want to live. And with the regulations that prevent people that are over income from moving in, don't necessarily apply for them to be evicted once they become residents of the building. So if your financial conditions or circumstances improve while you're a resident, we can't necessarily evict you for that reason. Your rent is adjusted minimally, but you get to live there. But then you're taking up a space from someone that could benefit from the lower rent. And you should be able to move on to something else. So part of our resident services or youth and family services was reaching out to these families and asking them if they had ever considered homeownership, about converting rent into equity. And some of them would say, well, no, I don't think we can. And a lot of them actually didn't know that they were ready to buy, that they could buy. And so we had a first time home buyer program and partnered with community other partners and lenders to process families through that initial phase of home ownership or preparing for home ownership, and actually helping them with down payment assistance or moving costs. And we funded that to be able to assist families to move from rental to home ownership.
Are these youth and family service coordinators? Is that something that's at all of your communities? Because that's something really unique. How did you guys incorporate that into your model of delivery?
Well, our thinking kind of evolved beyond just providing a unit or a roof over somebody's head. We wanted to be able not monitor, but outcomes were more important than output. So we weren't so concerned about the total number of units that we would create as much as the quality of the units and the quality of life and the outcomes for the families that we housed. So initially we created CHOC created a property management company, and we thought, okay, the property management company, that way if we have our own company, property management company, we can at least monitor the progress of, how families are paying rent, whether they have any financial needs, and maybe things that we could assist with. But that wasn't good enough. If you're a property management company, the lease for that unit is the legal document that governs that relationship. People have to pay rent. You have to enforce that. And and so that wasn't the vehicle that we needed to build the relationships with the residents. And then we created the Youth and Family Services program. And the program is designed to connect families to services. We don't provide all the services. We provide some, but the ones that we don't, we build the relationships with community providers that then supplement the work that we do. It's intense. This past year with COVID, it was a nightmare. They were out every single day in the middle of a shutdown, in the middle of a pandemic, working with families, and especially during the pandemic, where the children weren't going to school and there was no place for them to go. The community buildings, the community rooms were closed, the parks were closed. It was difficult. This team of workers were the heroes of that period.
One thing you mentioned earlier that I want to circle back to is the concept of transit. One of your many accomplishments was the Fruitvale Transit Village. And that development even won many awards and is now a model for transit-oriented developments across the nation. Talk to us about why this was so important and what it's done for you.
The Fruitvale Village was the development that garnered a lot of attention, and this was during the Clinton administration and Al Gore, with all the environmental concerns, and that transit needed to be more than about transportation, that it could be a hub for a livable, walkable community. People could get off the BART or the rapid transit and walk home, stop in the store, drop off the dry cleaning, go to the library, and so that it would be a cluster of community scale shops and that to support the commuter. The BART station in Oakland at the Fruitvale was abandoned. The station was working, but the parking lots in the evening it was just a sea of parking. It was where all the illegal activities happened at night. During the day, people would drive down, park the car, get in their car, go to work, come home, get in their car, leave the area. And so it became a playground for illegal activity. And the community was really suffering, and BART needed to protect its riders. The BART that wasn't concerned with the community. They were only concerned with their riders. So BART had proposed to build a parking structure facing the station so that the commuters had no interaction with the community. So the buses drove down 52 buses, lines that drove down the streets, fumes, used up the parking lots, parked their cars, went to work, came home, did the same thing, and went home in the evening. And the Fruitvale neighborhood was dying, literally dying. East 14th Street or International Boulevard, that had been the center of activity and retail in the area, was dead. The area was blighted. No one wanted to go there. No one wanted to live there. In fact, when I accepted the job to do this project, my family, everyone said, "You're going to work where?" And then my son would stand up and say, "Yes, my mom is working in the Fruitvale because she believes that one person can make a difference. And we all have the responsibility to do that." So the Fruitvale Village was difficult. BART never expected the Fruitvale neighborhood to organize itself to oppose their parking structure. That would be a sensibility that they expected from the Rockridge, a higher resource neighborhood, but not the Fruitvale. And as luck would have it, here's a little nonprofit that opposed it, that convened the people of the neighborhood, convened the voice of the residents, and opposed in opposition of the parking structure. And so we told BART that anything that they did there had to involve community input. It had to benefit the community. BART came in the 70s and acquired all the land. They exercised eminent domain. And when there's no opposition, there was no natural surveillance because the homes had gone away and the people had gone away. So there was no sense of community. So there was no organic surveillance of the area. And the parking lots for BART became prostitution. It was drug dealing. And in the morning when people parked, they could see the remnants of the activity that took place the night before. So we worked with BART on creating a plan. And again, who would ever think that a nonprofit would have the ability or the capacity to undertake such a project? And so it was believed that it couldn't be done. This is the project that everyone would like to see built, but no one believed that it could be done. So I guess we did it.
Well, kudos to your son for capturing really the goal of life when he said one person can make a difference. And each of these projects you've discussed with us has really conveyed how you and Community Housing Opportunities is doing just that. And really reflecting over, your career and what you've been doing. You have such an extensive background. I mean, you've done everything from real estate development to economic development to organizational management, and covering the scope of infill housing and mixed income, in such a variety of mixed use developments. Is there something that really stands out that you want to share that was either a turning point or such an encouraging moment for you in this industry of affordable housing?
Recently, I interviewed a young lady that was applying for an internship at CHOC. And she graduated from UC Davis and wanted to work in housing and community development. And so I asked her, why CHOC and why affordable housing? And her story is not unlike many of the stories that we hear. She was the first in her family to go to college. And she was able to do that because growing up, her family always lived in affordable housing. And being able to live in affordable housing allowed them to live in neighborhoods and communities with better schools than what they would have been able to afford on their own. And the better schools led to enhanced education. She's the first in her family to go to college, to graduate from college. And now she wants to give back. She wants to work with affordable housing, and she wants to give back. The greatest joy in my life. I have my professional life, and that's good. But the greatest joy in my life has been being a grandmother. You know, we think that we can love our children more than life itself, and then we become grandparents and we fall in love with our grandchildren. But my granddaughter was doing a project for school, and she wanted to interview me. She chose me as the person that she admired. And so she asked me, "What do you want your headstone to say?" I said, "Well, I'm not ready for the headstone yet. But what do you want your legacy to be?" And for me, it's about living with significance. And that's what I told her. I have a commitment to living with significance, of taking responsibility for every dimension of my life, devotion to family, and the pursuit of knowledge, and probably excellence as well. But I love what I do. I love my job. Every day that I leave work could be the most exhausting day of my life and the happiest day of my life. In leading this organization, my goal is to provide the leadership, create the vision. I tell staff, when I hire someone, I tell them, "Look, I'm giving you a blank canvas. I want you to paint me a pretty picture. Carve out the job that you want for yourself within the parameters of the organization, of what we do. Here's a blank canvas. Carve out the job that you want for yourself, because this is the only way that people are going to be happy, when they take ownership of the work that they do and they feel committed and passionate about the work they do. And they will do that if it comes from within, if it's their idea, if it's organic to their being."
Yep.
And so I know two things. I'm a good decision maker, and I'm a great negotiator. And that's where I leave my my velvet hammer. The rest of my time is about creating excitement, creating the vision, and helping people become the visionaries. I don't want to provide them with the vision. I want them to see it. I want them to create that, develop that will to be unique, to be relevant, to bring meaning and to the work that they do and contribute to the success of the organization. You know, when you talk about community development, it's a discipline unto itself. And there are very eloquent ways of talking about it. But in reality, at its core, it's very simple. A strong community has 5 components. And it's the same thing that I would look for if I was buying a house. I want to know about the schools. I want to know about jobs. I want to know about healthcare. I want to know where parks and recreation would be. I want to know where the pharmacy is and grocery stores, all of that. If that's what matters to me, then that should be what matters for everyone else. That should be the quality of life that everybody else is entitled to.
Well, that's exactly right. And then on the reverse of that, it's why many of us can drive through a community and spot when it's not been done well. You know, the mere fact that you can spot affordable housing is, a failure of the system, because, they've not incorporated healthy design, healthy community amenities, healthy location, whatever those are, or they've not been able to renovate them to integrate them. So we stand corrected to remember those healthy components, don't we?
I'm glad you said it.
Well, Manny, thank you so much. It has been such a great opportunity for you to share what Community Housing Opportunities is doing in California and elsewhere. So great job to you and your team.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to ChangeMakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.